Welcome, Venerable. So today's topic is karma. We create our reality.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. All right, you hear me on Zoom? Good, okay. All right, here we are. Right. So we just set our motivation, as the Lamas would put it, stating our purpose for being together. And we're going to discuss that very thing here, that it's the thoughts that we have that determine the character of our actions. That's exactly what we're going to be discussing. So here we're doing an action called sitting here together, listening to these words from the Buddhist view of life, So we think, why are we doing it? Because the motivation is the key thing, and that's what we'll discuss today. So we make it an altruistic motivation, make it an expansive one. We think we're going to listen, think about it, and see if there's information here that is useful, we take as tools to help us develop it. First of all, the first reason is to develop our own amazing potential, to become a wiser, happier, more fulfilled person. So that on the other hand, because we live in this world together, we can be of use to others. That makes it, that simple statement of that purpose makes the motivation for this action which makes the action more powerful. It's a very interesting concept, actually, and I think we can understand it. We'll go into that today. So we're going to sing a little prayer, the second two lines of which express this thought. And the first two lines are for those of us who kind of already identify with being a Buddhist. And it's just kind of reiterating our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. Sangye charang soke chognam la jangshu baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok sangye charang soke chognam la jangshu baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok Sangye charan soke chognam la, jangsho baru dagni kyab suchi. Dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki, drola penchir sangye drupasho. Well, I think in general, the view of karma is so radically different, both from the religious views of the creators like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, so utterly different, and also from totally different from the view of the world, the modern view, the view of literally the philosophical materialist view. Got the philosophy of being a Christian, philosophy of being a materialist. That's the view that seems to predominate in our world. One that certainly we take for granted as a truth. This view of the Buddhas is utterly different, radically different. And initially hearing it is quite shocking because it's absolutely opposite of what we think, generally speaking. So that's why it's hard for us to hear it, And the other major reason it's hard for us to hear it, because when we hear the concept religion, when we hear religious philosophy, we assume that means creator. That seems to be a default view in our minds. If it's religious philosophy, you must believe in a creator. And if you believe in a creator, then the creator is the boss, the creator runs the world, creator makes the world, creator runs the show, the creator runs the laws, creates the laws, and needs to be obeyed. I mean, that's generally speaking the view we tend to have, even if we don't articulate it like that. So that makes it extra hard for us to hear it properly, because the Buddha doesn't assert a creator. It's a radical difference again. And I think it's important to always spell that out. Because sometimes, people say it doesn't seem to be very different. But the more we think about it, it's radically different. Let's look at it. And also, I like to say, and I think it's true, if we, the Buddha's view of the world, which is expressed in this view of karma, literally what the world is, specifically what are beings, what is happiness, what is suffering, what is the mind, what drives it all. As far as Buddha is concerned, there's law this natural law of cause and effect, this natural law of karma underpins everything. It's sort of the absolute basis, you know, of the entire Buddhist view of what the world is, how it exists, happiness, suffering, blah, blah, blah. So the Buddha's view, roughly speaking, is that there are trillions and trillions of minds, consciousnesses. They have the term mental continuum, like a river of mental moments. And the mind is the word used to refer to your thoughts and feelings and emotions and unconscious, subconscious, instinct, intuition, this entire spectrum of our inner being. And the fundamental point for the Buddha, fundamental point, is that it's not physical. We're not discussing the workings of the brain. And that too is a shock. We can't hear that properly if we hear that in our modern world. Because as far as we're concerned, brain and mind are the same thing. The Buddha, absolutely not. His view, and it's coming, because he's not a creator, we discussed this last week, it's not coming from the sky, it's not made up by somebody, it's coming from the direct experience of the Buddha, and anybody since him, who's followed the Buddha's steps and has found them to be valid, you know, it's from observation. This is the part, again, that shocks us. That there are infinite number of consciousnesses, mind streams, minds, mind possessors, sentient being, mind possessor, humans, animals, all kinds of beings we can't see, trillions and trillions and trillions of them. And their mind is, you know, every second of it, this natural law of cause and effect. The word used, karma, I don't know what it means. I've heard it means action. I don't know, Sanskrit word. It's kind of shorthand for this natural law of cause and effect, such that everything a being thinks and does and says. Very quite simple. A natural law such that everything a being, an ant, a dog, a human, whatever, thinks and does and says, without exception. That is the very process that produces that person, moment by moment, but crucially in the long term, so as the Buddha would put it, sow seeds in that mind. They don't just disappear, don't go astray, but build up and eventually, like seeds do, manifest as fruits. And those fruits, the long term, are types of rebirth, experiences, mental tendencies, and all of that. So we are literally, as the Dalai Lama says, karma is like self-creation. So in this sense, it's a radically different view. And it's the basis of all Buddhist teachings, actually. All the Buddhist teachings come down to this one. So what's the point of it all? Why would you have this view? Well, I mean, let's be more, I'm sure we discussed this last week, but we'll go into more detail. We did discuss last week. So, you know, go to one more level of detail. If everything you think and do and say sows seeds in your mind that don't go astray and ripen in the future as your experience, as you know, there's another level of detail. Everything you think and do and say that's labeled negative or non-virtuous ripens as future suffering, and everything you think and do and say that's labeled virtuous or positive ripens as happiness. I mean, it's as simple as that. The process itself is not simple, but the principle is pretty simple. So the logic being, therefore, this is the point of it, if you want happiness in the future, if you want good things and happy experiences, and we're just talking ordinary life, then it's to our advantage if we decide to follow Buddha, to see what he states would be labeled a virtuous action, and then listen to it, think about it, make it your own. You buy into it, and then you follow the instructions. It's like you would if you decided to grow a garden. You listen to the botanist, you take on board what the botanist says, and you follow their instructions and get the result. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, of course, it's not how we think in the world. To think that what goes on in your mind is the main cause of whether you're happy or suffering sounds like a joke to us. We almost don't think it plays any role at all. You know, why? It's because we believe the outside world is the main cause of our happiness and suffering. And of course, as for the future, we don't even posit such a thing. I mean, if you're a materialist, when you die, you die. You know, so there's no concept of producing any future apart from the years that we live in this life. So it's in that sense a very different view. So it's all driven. Why you'd want to live your life according to this view is driven by is the wish to be happy and not suffer. Is the wish to be happy and not suffer. That's pretty basic. That's the reason, not because somebody says so. And that's why it's so crucial to look at the difference, and I'm sure we discussed this last week, between the Christian teaching. If I'm following Jesus, why I'm following Jesus is because, it's because I want to be with Jesus when I die, be with God, and doing his wishes is the cause. That's not the Buddha's view. It's nothing to do with being with Buddha. It's nothing to do with it. It's nothing to do with doing it. It's nothing to do with that. It's from his observation, he has found that certain types of states of mind, and then doing actions that are driven by those states of mind will ripen as future suffering. In certain states of mind, and then doing actions based on those will ripen as future happiness. So that means we should know what happiness and suffering is. What does it mean? Well, this way it's getting more tricky because Buddha's got his first teaching, and the Four Noble Truths presents this. Very first teaching Buddha gave. He'd been brought up in this Hindu tradition, and in these amazing geniuses, as a Dalai Lama always says, I always quote, these geniuses 3,000 years ago were the ones who began all this investigation to the nature of self. What is true? What is a self? What is reality? What is real? What exists? What is true, He went as far as he could go in his genius system, and then he diverged in his own direction, specifically in relation to his own findings about what is true, what is real, what is self, what is reality, what's not. So as far as he's concerned, the first of these Four Noble Truths, as they call them, well, really, I think technically it's the four truths, the four facts for the noble ones. Noble one is a term used to refer to a person who's developed a certain level of realization, who's realized these truths. Well, the first one is there is suffering. The tricky part is he identifies three levels of suffering. And the first one that he actually calls the suffering of suffering is the only one that we consider to be suffering. It's basic, and simply speaking, is when the bad things happen. So forget the more subtle ones, forget the more subtle levels, forget that. Just this one alone. If you want to understand Buddha's deal, this is to understand this. But so we should look at this interesting thing about happiness and suffering. I mean, if you think about it, they're the only two options. If you use those words, there's only one other option. If you say suffering, the opposite is happiness. If you say happiness, the opposite is suffering. And there's almost like no alternative. There's no option. There's no third option. You can say neither, neither happy nor suffering, which kind of sounds like boredom. You could say that. But basically, speaking more simply, happiness is when the good things happen, using this first level, just simply understanding the first level. What we mean by happiness, I think, is when the good things happen. What we mean by suffering is when the bad things happen. I think we all agree with that. That's pretty simple. So it's really helpful to look into that, understand that. And understanding it means we've got to look into the mind. How do we define it, What do we mean by good things? What do we mean by bad things? So this is more advanced than the view. It's more in the teachings, in the stages of the path. The karmic one comes first, and what I'm about to describe is the next level. But I find it very interesting to understand this one. We understand the mind. So, Buddha's view of the mind, speaking again fairly simply, the psychological model of the mind. He talks about positive, then we've got neurotic, deluded, unhappy states of mind. We have positive, useful, virtuous states of mind. Forget the third lot. These are kind of never mind those for now. And the first lot, as far as Buddha is concerned, his own observation is, if we follow this first lot, the neurotic, unhappy ones, follow those, do actions on the basis of those, that's the cause of suffering. That's so seed in your mind that can only ripen as your future suffering. It's just the way it is. It's not a judgment, it's not reward, it's not punishment, it's a natural law. This is the crucial point that Buddha makes. Usually when we think about being a good person, being virtuous, it's doing good things and then being rewarded for it. And if you talk about being naughty, when you're naughty, it means you'll get punished. And that's the view we have very strongly, this dualistic view of punishment and reward. That's why we think if no one sees us do something naughty, we think, oh, I got away with it. Really, we should analyze that. This is mind-blowing, actually. That's how we think. You don't get caught. You get away with it. That's quite schizophrenic for the Buddha. For the Buddha, that's like thinking that if, you know, your doctor says don't smoke, and you say, why not? You know, it's as if she says, because I say so. And if you smoke, I'll give you cancer. That's how that's the religious view. That's the creative view. God punishes you. God rewards you. Well, it's the same in our world. If you're a naughty girl and you don't do what mummy says, mummy doesn't catch you, you get away with it. So thinking like that dualistic view of punishment and reward, which is what's deep in our bones of ego, and it's just absurd for the Buddha. It's like you go home and you see your doctor's not there, think, oh, okay, I won't get cancer because she doesn't see me, so I'm going to smoke my Marlboros. We know that's ridiculous. We know that's infantile because we know it's not judgment. It's not punishment. We know it's natural law that if you smoke, it's been found by the experts that impacts upon your lungs and produces sickness. That's natural law. Well, that's how Buddha talks. That doing negative actions is a natural law. It pollutes your mind and produces suffering results. It is not punishment, but this is so deep in our bones to hear it like that. That's why we hear it as punitive and oh, I shouldn't do this and I'm not allowed to do this because I'm a naughty girl and I'll get punished. That view is so strong in our mind. It's completely deluded. It's completely absurd. It's infantile, in fact, and it's utterly irrelevant. So if we can understand this, then it changes the entire way we understand karma. But it takes time. We hear it as punishment and reward. And that's why when you're a good girl and no one rewards you for it, you feel so disappointed, like it's not worthwhile. If no one sees me do something good, what's the point? So in other words, we really are deeply rooted in this idea of wanting to be approved of, wanting to be rewarded, and not wanting to be punished. That drives most of our actions, you know. It's very intense. We can see that. You know, if you think about success, let's say you're a musician. Success by definition is other people clapping you. You sitting in your room playing Bach, the best, better than anybody on the planet. All you want is to be heard by others. You don't even think you're being an important musician unless you're not. That shows how deep this attachment, and that's attachment. That's attachment. That's this neurotic, I-based, emotional craving and hunger that thinks already I'm nothing and that assumes I'm only something when I get praised and approved of and therefore rewarded. That's how we think. Look at us. That's why we suffer so terribly if we don't get that. And then when we get found out to be naughty or accused of being naughty, especially if you're not, this is the worst suffering in the universe for us. Think about this. This is tremendously powerful. This is because of attachment and aversion, attachment and anger. It's totally rooted. This whole way we are is rooted in these two, you know. So this view here is extraordinary. The Buddha says you produce yourself. What you think and do and say, you first are the recipient of the results. You first. Forget out there. So the very first level of practice, there's no discussion of being compassionate. There's just be compassionate to yourself first. So don't kill. Why not? You ask Buddha, why not? He says, well, being a honey child, have a look what killing is. And that's what we have to do, is analyze. Why is killing wrong? We should analyze it. Why? We vaguely think, oh, it's naughty, you know, shouldn't do it. That's sort of, okay, it's sort of right. Let's analyze it. And this is, again, a crucial point. Jesus says don't kill. I discussed this one because God said. This is very clear for the Christians. I asked a Catholic priest, what is a sin by definition? This is really enormously powerful. You know, it's like saying, why is smoking wrong? Because the doctor said. And going against the doctor makes you get cancer. That's the religious view of a creator. And nothing, I'm not complaining, but it's not the Buddha's view, that's for sure. The Buddha says, The doctor says smoking is wrong because it'll harm you. It's so pretty obvious. It's not moralistic. Hello, people. Come on in. Hi. So here we're talking about the mind in just the same way. It's a natural law. Buddha says, so Buddha says killing is wrong, one, because it harms others. That's what makes it, that's, because it harms others. So it's labeled a negative action. It's natural law. But this is the piece we miss, I think. But the reason at the beginning, the very first level of practice that Buddha exhorts us, suggests you don't kill, isn't because it harms others. It's because it'll harm you. And that's the part we have to look at. That's the part we find hard to see. That's the part we find very difficult to see. That's the part we find hard to see. This is the point. So why would killing harm me? Why would my killing an ant harm me? Why? Well, if we take this view of the Buddhas, everything I think and do and say programs my mind, then I look at what, and this is the key point about motivation now. This is the key thing. In general, we can say killing is wrong because ants don't like being killed. Dogs don't like being killed. Humans don't like, no, sentient beings don't like being harmed. I think we can identify that if we do our research. Or check yourself. Sentient beings don't like being harmed. It's pretty clear. That we can prove. But to see how that harms me, that's a trickier one. So this is where the Buddha's view is, that everything, a mind thinks every second, what goes on in the mind, every second. And then what you do on the basis of that with your body and speech, that's the process that programs your mind. So now what it means is we have to understand what motivates the action. That's the point. Because picking up your hand, with a knife, or picking up your foot and standing on an ant is the action of killing. Picking up your foot and standing on the ant, that's the action of killing. That's the action of killing. But it's really obvious, isn't it? If your mind isn't involved, if you don't see an ant and don't know there's an ant, and your mind therefore is not involved in that, then you could argue that you didn't kill. There's no mental decision to kill. That's what determines whether or not you create karma. It's what goes on in your mind. It's pretty obvious. It's really logical, I think. The mind is the point. Therefore, so that's what we have to look at. Then what are the things that need to be in place when you do an action called killing? If it's defined as what they call a complete action, which is the one that'll sow seeds in the mind, that'll bring all four results, and we'll go into that. Then there have to be four things in place when you do it. So the first would be the living being. If it's called killing, it's got to be related to a being that's alive, it means a living ant. That's the first one. There has to be an ant there. The second one, which is the crucial one, is your mind involved in it. So there's many bits there, but the two main ones here are the first one, which is called intention. And that doesn't mean motivation. This is one, there's many states of mind. I said before, you've got the negative and positive states of mind, but there's another category. We've mentioned this. I call them the mechanics of our mind, that are parts of our mind that are working all the time, that enable us to do anything, like good memory, that's called discrimination, the ability to discriminate between this and that, concentration. These are neither good nor bad. They're neither virtuous nor non-virtuous, but they're necessary states of mind. So whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need those to be functioning properly. If you're a sniper, you need very good discrimination to distinguish between Fred and Mary, because you kill the wrong person otherwise. You need very good concentration, And so they're really necessary states of mind. So here, in this action of killing, to qualify it as an action of killing, such that it leaves these seeds in your mind that will ripen in the future as the 4 results, which I'll go into. In the second point is your mind involved. And the first one there, 2A, is intention. And that's in the third category. It simply means I will, volition. It's the bare bones I will. It's neither negative nor positive. The second part of the mind, 2B, if you like, that gives it the quality, and that's the motivation. The third one is you do the action. Fourth result, dead ant. Roughly speaking, that's a complete action of killing an ant. It'll bring the complete results. And the crucial one there, the main one there, from your point of view, in terms of the karma you create, from your point of view, in terms of the programming in your mind, is the second one. So it's obvious. There's Rosanna can have an ant in her kitchen, and I've got an ant in my kitchen. First point, tick the box, both the same. Second, mind involved in the action. Well, Rosanna doesn't see the ant, so there's no intention, I will kill the ant. And there's no motivation, anger, for example. This just doesn't exist in her mind. 3, do the action. That's it. She did it. She put her foot on the ant. 4, dead ant. Those 3 are there, but the crucial piece is missing. She didn't intend to do it. There was no intention and therefore no motivation. So you could argue there's 0 karma created, because karma is a term used to refer to what goes on in the mind. The main karma is mental. I've got an ant, but my mind, intention, I will kill the ant. Why, Robina? Because it's disgusting. How dare an ant be in my kitchen? 3, there's my mind involved. 3, I do the action. 4, dead ant. Now, her ant might even have suffered more. You think like that. Her ant could have suffered more than my ant. But the karma, what happened in my mind, determines the results for me. But for Rosanna, you could argue there's no karma. Well, how can there be? Her mind didn't see, she didn't see it, and she didn't intend, and there was no motivation. Now, she might have been wanting to kill her husband. That's a whole other discussion. But she's nothing in relation to the ant. This is a really technical point, but it's really obvious. If you're walking down the street and there's a homeless person. 1, an object, a person. 2, intention to be generous. No, doesn't exist in your mind. And motivation, compassion. No, doesn't exist. You see the person, you have no interest. 3, $20 falls out of your pocket. 4, they get $20. Oh, thank you, Rosanna. But she didn't intend to be generous, and she had no motivation. 0 karma of generosity. This is happening every millisecond. We are working with our mind every millisecond. And this is the most important job for a Buddhist, because what goes on in your mind is the most important thing. This is what determines everything. It determines everything. And the Buddha says his long-term result is we can rid the mind of the rubbish, because the rubbish, acting on the rubbish causes suffering. But getting rid of the rubbish in the mind, stopping harming others, getting rid of the rubbish, growing your virtue and getting wisdom, that's the process of becoming a Buddha. And that's all this is all this is part of the process of how to do that. So really it's sort of fairly obvious if we think that what we do in our mind makes a difference, but we don't think that way. Or if we do kill the ant, we know the ant is there, we know we intend to kill it, we know we have aversion, we do the action and the ant dies, and we think, oh, I'm allowed to. Look how disgusting that ant is. It's going to poison me, so I'm allowed to kill. And even the fact that we say I'm allowed to kill, it's as if someone gives us permission, so we get off the hook. We already have this dualistic view. Oh, but I'm allowed to kill. Well, it's got nothing to do with being allowed. It's like saying, oh, I'm allowed to eat sugar. Nothing to do with being allowed to eat sugar. Sugar will bring a result. And if you're going to get diabetes, honey, allowed to or not is not relevant. No one's in charge. It's a natural law. Eating sugar gives you diabetes. It's a natural law. If you kill with aversion, you're programming your own mind, whether you're allowed to or not. Allowed to is meaningless. It's nonsense. It implies someone's in charge. Someone's running the show. We need permission. Well, can I kill the ant, please? It's not fair. I can't help it. Well, can I eat sugar, please, doctor? Will you not give me diabetes? We're not stupid saying that. It's a natural law. It's a natural law, but we think of morality as a bunch of rules that somebody else has made and stuck on top of me. It's very infantile. Buddha says it's natural law. No one runs it. No one punishes. No one rewards. It's a natural law. This is the point. And this is what we find hard to hear. Because we're so caught up in, I'm allowed to be angry. Look at my ugly boyfriend. I'm allowed to be jealous. I'm allowed to be depressed. Look at my horrible life. We dump the blame on everybody. We're dualistic. We think it's not my fault. I didn't ask to get born. He did it. She did it. They did it. All we're trying to do is get off the hook. This is the suffering of ego. We can see it. So karma is something very obvious. We just don't call it that. We don't use that concept. But we have to think about it. I mean, we know, I always use this example, we know that when it comes to me becoming a good cook, even simply a good cook, forget a good musician, forget a good physicist, that what goes on in my mind is the most important thing. We know that. And so every thought I have in relation to cooking is extremely important and must be accurate. But when it comes to morality, which is what we're talking here, we don't think that at all. In fact, as Robert says, and I'm still so shocked by it, but it's so true. He said exactly this. He said, the vast majority of all humans on the planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in their mind plays any role at all in their lives. That's like saying that when in relation to becoming a good cook, what goes on in your mind plays no role at all. That's completely mental illness, because it's the exact opposite. Your hand will not put the right number of eggs in unless your mind decides it. It's really obvious. Your hands will not play the note on the piano if your mind hasn't got the theory down. So it's really obvious when it comes to producing a musician, a cook, or anything else in our clever world, the mind is everything. But when it comes to being a happy person and a suffering person, we don't have any, it's what Lama's ever meant. We have no idea that what goes on in our mind plays any role at all. That shows we're quite schizophrenic, I would say, quite mentally ill. That's how we are, if you analyze it. No wonder we suffer. I mean, no wonder we suffer. So Buddha's just talking common sense, really. He's a very common sense fellow. So the trouble is, of course, we have 1,000 thoughts a second, so it's quite hard. This long-term job is quite difficult. Got to start somewhere. So you start with the servants of your mind, which is your body and speech. At least harness, you can control the servants of your anger, the servants of your jealousy, the servants of your depression, the servants of your attachment. Calm down your body and your speech. At least don't do the action driven by the delusion. Why? Because you know what, Robina? You are sick of suffering, because you don't want future suffering. That's the motivation behind the first level of practice in Buddhism. We hear it as punitive and resentful and judgmental. I'm not allowed to do this and I'm not allowed to do that, otherwise I'll get punished. We have this view so strong, and it's completely irrational. You are the beneficiary of what you do and then say and think. There's no question. You're the beneficiary. So it's got to be sort of out of self-compassion, really, is the best way to put it. Why you would not want to kill is out of self-compassion. Why you would not want to lie or steal or cheat is out of self-compassion. We don't hear it like that. So the Buddha is saying, this is the big view, the long-term view, that everything we think and do and say programs us and puts the seeds in our mind, and they'll ripen in 4 ways. One, and this is the most radical difference, like a joke as far as we're concerned, in a type of a new rebirth. I mean, it's hilarious for us. We think that's the dumbest thing we've ever heard, reincarnation. It's hilarious. It's ridiculous. Christians don't talk about it. Muslims don't talk about it. Jews don't talk about it. Maybe some, I remember one time in Miami, there was me, a Catholic priest, a rabbi, and who was the fourth one? Some kind of other Christian. Sounds like a joke, doesn't it? And the topic was, why do bad things happen to good people? So I remember maybe it's only three of us, the Catholic, me, the rabbi, and a Catholic priest. So the Catholic priest, I don't remember his answer. Me, I was a straightforward karma, and the rabbi clapped. He said, oh, we have the same view. He said he was a Kabbalah rabbi. And they have a very similar view philosophically. The very traditional Jews say it's a load of rubbish. I suppose the very traditional Christians would say the same, because you hear some Christians talk about it as well. But this concept that you continue on, I mean, he cracked jokes about Hitler. Jews don't crack jokes about Hitler, I promise, but he did. So this idea of reincarnation, it's been in Asia, it's been in India, since these amazing genius Indians, who are the ones who plumb the depths of the mind with their brilliant skill called single-pointed concentration, discovered these subtler levels of mind. And with that subtler level of mind, more powerful, seeing the past, seeing the future. Clairvoyance is a very natural consequence of these techniques, which has been around, as I said, in India for more than 3,000 years. Totally articulated, all laid out, all there in the literature. It's been around for 3,000 plus years. But what do we know about it in our culture? I just think it's a load of rubbish. So it's all there. But we have the capability of accessing more subtle levels of our mind when we get single point of concentration, where it's beyond the conceptual, beyond the sensory, which we don't even posit as existing in modern psychology. So you can have these subtle levels of mind that just sound like science fiction to us. But this is all the presentation of what the mind is in the Hindus as well, and certainly for the Buddha. So a completely different view. So we have these subtle levels of mind. And with that subtle level of mind, you can cognize things that are more subtle. And they would say, like the past and the future. So it is the observation of the Buddha and other beings who have accomplished that path that your mind goes back and back. And when you die, it will go on and on. In fact, for the Buddha, it's a beginning, this endless continuity of mental moments. Does not have a beginning and does not have an end. Literally, conventionally speaking, not even some cosmic idea. That's hilarious to us. That's hilarious to us. That's utterly different from the Christian teaching. It's obvious. The Christians say that God, this energy that doesn't have a source, that doesn't have a cause, that is permanent and whatever, this is the source of everything else. And there are detailed teachings among the Christians of how they can be a first cause. For the Buddha, it's not viable, impossible, and unnecessary. So these teachings are very, very, very different. So the Buddha's view is consciousness continues. Consciousness goes on and on and on. It goes back and back and back. River of mental moments. And what programs it every second is what goes on in that mind and what that mind does. So we are literally the creators of ourselves. We don't need an external source judging us and rewarding us. We just don't need that. It's irrelevant and not viable anyway, Buddha says. Dualistic. It's not how it is. Mind runs itself. We are the ones that can learn to be in charge. It's quite an intense point, actually. It's quite fascinating. This is Buddha's observation. So if it is true, this is my mind, that is not physical. If it's true, it doesn't come from a mother or a father or a creator, and it's not a function of the brain, there's its own entity that goes back and back and back, and that everything that goes on inside it programs it and produces future happiness and suffering. And if it's true, I don't want suffering, even the gross level of the bad things happening, then I better learn to be in charge. I better learn to know what this law is. I mean, if you want a beautiful garden, you better learn botany. So if I want happiness, forget Buddhahood, forget realizing emptiness, forget nirvana, I'm just talking ordinary level, having nice things happen, then I better learn to know Buddha's botany. This is the law of karma. That's the thinking. So the Buddha says, everything we think and do and say programs the mind, so season the mind. And if any one of these actions that, as I said, is called what they call a complete action, in order for it to drop it, the way I put it, into our main bank vault. I mean, I'll just talk this way, such that that will be one of the seeds that will be triggered at the time of our death that will produce a type of rebirth. So in our case, a human rebirth. The Buddha says of all the options of types of rebirth, the best of a bad lot in samsara is a human one, because you've got at least some access to some virtue and some goodness if you're fortunate. Being born an animal is not helpful. Your mind's so overwhelmed by ego grasping and fears and delusions, you can't see past your own nose. Impossible. Impossible. The suffering was too intense. Not to mention other types of rebirth the Buddha would suggest are even more suffering. So if this is true, if you take on the view that you're abiding by the laws of karma, you're buying into the Buddha's view, this is your working hypothesis, and you know that you're getting older and you're dying soon, you could die soon, you want to make sure your mind's nicely programmed. It's just reasonable. If you want a garden in 10 years, you better start now. If you want money in the bank for retirement, you better start now. If you want a decent human rebirth when you die, you better start now, programming your mind with the appropriate seeds. It's quite reasonable. We get the concept. In the ordinary world, we understand planning for the future. It doesn't confuse us. We understand it. We find it very intelligent to plan for the future. Well, that's all Buddha's saying. Plan for the future, babe. It's up to you. It's up to you to produce your own future. So if you want a decent human rebirth, the first one, the first way karma ripens is a type of rebirth. Human. Let's just say human. So the cause of that will be an action of non-killing. The most intense non-harming action you can do is non-killing. Remember, intentional. At this moment in time, each of us is not killing. It's true, look at us. But our mind's not involved, is it? Our mind's not doing a thought, I will not kill, because there's no one in front of us to not kill. The ant isn't there, the mouse isn't there. So there's no thought of not killing in our minds at this moment. So at this moment, we're not creating any karma of not killing. And just to get another decent human rebirth, you need bucket loads of strong, delicious, rich, intentional seeds of non-killing. So we need one of those, and we can deduce that at the time of our past death, a few weeks before our mind found its way to our present mother's fallopian tube, before we stopped even breathing in the previous life, one of our very strong, delicious, intentional, non-killing karmic seeds, or probably practice in the context of keeping vows of not killing, which we'll discuss, which we have discussed and we will discuss again, as Lama Zopa says, that was triggered by the various conditions of our mind at the time of that death. As we're starting to die, we haven't even stopped breathing yet. One of those particular seeds was triggered. We've got billions of seeds in our mind. If our mind goes back and back and back, and if every millisecond we're dropping seeds into our bank vaults, there must be an awful lot of seeds in there. So like a miracle, not like a miracle though, one of our virtuous seeds was triggered, which already programmed us a few weeks later, when it left that body, after it left that body, to find its way to our present mother's womb. Karma is very precise. Karma is very particular, very personal. Again, this is a shocking idea to us. It's hilarious concept. It's a natural law. If it's a natural law, then it's not unreasonable. If it's a natural law, then it's not haphazard. It's not random. Can't be such a thing if it's a natural law. The only reason you think that the flower popping up yesterday at 2 p.m. is random is because you don't know botany. Once you learn botany, it's logical it came up at 2 p.m. because you know all the conditions came together at that moment. Same here with karma. So the first seed talking about our life now, the first one was one of our virtuous non-killing karmic seeds was triggered before we even stopped breathing. Now, at the same time, the other 3 sets of karmic seeds, bank vaults as I call it, the other 3 sets of karmic seeds were all triggered as well. So we'll look at those 3 and you'll see this is a good way of describing your entire life. So the next one is you've got a human body, right? Well, look at the human world. There's plenty of humans, 7 billion. But look at them. Look at the difference between them. Forget about whether they're old or fat or thin or male or female. Have a look at their activity. Have a look at what they do and say and think. That's where the differences are, aren't they? The mind. In other words, the second way karma ripens is your mental tendencies, the mind that occupies that body. You can see the difference. You got your Hitler mind and your Mother Teresa mind. Look at the differences. A bunch of mental tendencies, a bunch of mental tendencies. So this is where it's shockingly different from the materialist world. Look at it. So let's use Mr. Hitler. He had one particular karmic seed that was a fully ripened result, type of one, of non-killing, that was triggered in the womb of his mummy. Now, before he even died in the previous life. One of those seeds was triggered that was programmed to go to his present Austrian mummy's human womb. The second type of his virtues, or the second of his karmic seeds that were triggered at that same time, were all his mental tendencies. We'll have a look at his, how can you see his mental tendencies? We'll look at his actions. It shows you. So he must have had a few kind tendencies. He was good to his dog. He was good to his wife, good to some people who agreed with him, but he had clearly lots of other mental tendencies, didn't he? Pretty wacko, tendency to kill. Look at his mind. Look at his mind. You can tell by what he did. So this is so radically different. It's hilarious. We think it came from his mum. Can't blame his poor Austrian housewife mum for Hitler. It's ridiculous. He brought his seeds with him. He brought his own tendencies with him. Mother Teresa the same. Us the same. The dog the same. Those mental tendencies is the second bunch of, if you like, the second bank vault of seeds, which are the residual result of having done those actions before. A bunch of mental tendencies to be good at music, to be good at football, to be good at killing, to be good at psychosis, to be good at murder, whatever you like. Look at human beings. So we have some negative tendencies, don't we? And we have some positive tendencies. Aren't we fortunate? They're all programmed already before you even died in the past life. In other words, these have got nothing to do with your mother and father. That's the biggest shock for us who have this, the neuroscientific psychological view of the modern world, which says without question that all our tendencies come from our parents. Buddha says total, utter nonsense. This is so shocking to hear. You can be similar to your mother, but you don't get your qualities from your mother. This is the hugest difference and really takes us time to think through. Hitler he created the cause to have a human body, 1. 2, he created the cause to have all those mental tendencies that was the mind that occupied that body when he came out of his mother's womb. They were already programmed in his mind before he even died in the past life. Third bank vault of seeds that were then triggered, then they became all his experiences in that life. So come back to ourselves. 1, we got a human body. 2, all of our mental tendencies. They're ours. We brought them with us from our past habit. What's in your mind is a bunch of habits, basically. From the time you're conceived, they're your habits. Music, football, killing, you name it. You brought your own habits with you. Third one, we can see we're very social creatures, aren't we? We're very social. We live around other beings, don't we? Mummies, daddies, aunties, uncles, rats and cockroaches, grandmas and grandpas, next door neighbors. And if you think about it, from the second from the moment you were conceived up to now, you can divide all your experiences in this life, not your mind, but what happens to you, into 2 categories. The good things that have happened to you and the bad things. Look at your life. It's clear, isn't it? So every one of those experiences is called an experience similar to the cause. So, and here in the mind, every one of those moments is an intention or a tendency similar to the cause of having done it before. So you have a tendency to lie, a tendency to play music, a tendency to kill, a tendency to be generous from having done it before. So now those things will happen to you, won't they? You will get killed. You will be harmed. You'll be loved. You'll be given things. People will think you're beautiful. People will believe your words. People will be generous to you. Every second since you're born, we've had experiences at the hands of others every second of every day. Every one of these, the main cause of these is your past actions, like that. Every one of these in the mind, the main cause is your past tendency of having done that. So it's like literally we are the creators of our own realities. This is so shocking for us. So utterly different. We think the world is just this bad luck and good luck. I didn't ask to get born, not my fault. Bad things happen, good things happen. Someone might have a plan, but they don't tell me. I mean, no wonder we live in fear. No wonder we have anger. No wonder we have attachment. No wonder we all go crazy. Look at how we think. Buddha says it's completely demented, totally living in la-la land. The fourth way our karma ripens in this present life, they even call it the environmental karma, the way the physical world in general impacts upon us. So if you use one example of, say, non-killing, if non-killing were to ripen in these 4 ways for one person, and that's a person who'd live in vows of not killing, wouldn't be otherwise. We'll discuss this. So the 4 results of non-killing, if each of those bank vaults at the time of your conception and before you died in the previous life, the seeds ripened, the seeds were ready and triggered to play out in this life of not killing. 1, you get a human mummy. 2, you'd wake up with no thought to kill and would never arise in your mind to kill throughout this life. 3, you wouldn't get killed or die young. And 4, you'd be fat and healthy, and whatever you eat and drink would nourish you. The air would be nice, the food would be delicious, the water would be not polluted, the physical world would treat you nicely. We are the main cause of all those. This is a mind-blowing concept for us in the world. The Buddha says we create ourselves. So that always in the first cause, the way to apply this, if you're trying to live according to Buddha's view, the way you apply this in your daily life is in your analysis of when things happen. So, you wake up in the morning, your body feels good. Wow, it's amazing. This is a fruit of non-killing. I can't believe it. How fortunate I am. You wake up in the morning and the breakfast tastes delicious. Wow, amazing. I can't believe it. Environmental karma, not killing. You wake up in the morning and, your hubby smiles at you. Wow, there's an experience similar to the cause of being kind in the past. You wake up in the morning, your mind feels peaceful. Wow, this is a fruit of past virtue. Amazing. You're the main cause of 1, the virtuous thought, 2, your hubby smiling at you, and 3, the breakfast tasting nice. Every millisecond of your experience is the fruit of your past karma. The first cause every time, always the first cause is your past karma. The secondary cause is the nice food, the smiling hubby, and the whatever it was, I forgot. It's very shocking. This is how you apply it practically. You interpret. And then because you want hubby to keep being nice, you keep being kind, and you want to have good food, so you stop killing, and you want to have nice environment, so you stop killing. This is what drives you to want to stop killing, because you want that future result. Forget compassion. We're not discussing compassion yet. We're not discussing nirvana. We're not discussing Buddhahood. We're discussing simple, plain old happiness, having nice things happen. Of course, in this life, you're going to have bad things happen too, and you can't change it overnight, but you own it. So when hubby's mean to you, you say, okay, that's a fruit of past negative karma. Better not do that again. It's like if a cake gives you a bellyache, you think twice about eating it again because you don't want a bellyache. It's the same here. You learn from it. So you learn from the suffering experiences. You must have caused it. You don't want it in the future, so you must stop doing it, and you must purify it. And you want good things, so you keep doing it. It's kind of, you go look at your garden, and you see all the veggies in the garden. You planted them. You don't say, oh, wow, who put veggies in my garden? Aren't I lucky? The universe is kind to me. Rubbish. You planted them all. They're your veggies, babe. So, of course, you eat them and enjoy them, but you don't greedily eat them. You make sure you plant more so you have having more veggies for the future. It's so logical. It's so logical. All based upon this concept that you produce yourself, which takes time to even think theoretically, because it's so different from the views we have, Any questions, please? Any questions of any kind, based on what I've said so far?
Yes, Venerable Robina.
Go. Who's talking?
Raya here on Zoom.
What? Okay, please. Okay.
Hi,
Go on.
thank you, Venerable
Who's talking?
Robina. So I am an intensive care nurse, and I worked in critical care for a few years. And one of the things that sometimes we need to do when there is nothing else that can be done medically for the patients is to withdraw treatment.
Do what, darling?
To withdraw treatment from the patients that are not going to be able to survive based on medical treatments, basically. In other words, we are,
Well, let them die more quickly, you mean?
switching off either the ventilator or stopping the drug that's keeping them alive, or depending on the situation that they are in. So I'm just wondering, obviously, when I had to do the times I had to do it, I had compassion in my mind, but I just wanted to kind of understand how karma plays on that
I
situation.
understand, darling. I understand. I mean, it's many things involved. Of course, it's the first one is, I presume the person wants this. You're not doing it without them wanting it, right?
Well, if they are in ITU, then, in
If
intensive
what?
care,
Sorry, if what?
if they are intubated and they are sedated, sometimes they don't even know they are in hospital. They are very, very unwell. Like,
So you mean some other person decides to allow
yes,
them
the
to die more
doctors,
quickly?
with the family, the doctors will then
So the
decide
families decide.
with the doctor, yeah.
I see, okay.
And
I
I
mean, of course, all of these things are really tricky, because, I mean, it's the way the world is. I understand that. So we've got to be very cautious. In other words, if every time you think of this way, forget the compassion yet, forget that. Forget for the sake of the other. Look at the whole point is first is yourself. So it's if it is true, everything I think and then do and say programs my mind, then obviously I better be very careful, hadn't I, for my own sake, isn't it? So the general advice would be try to be careful and try and not be involved with in decisions like that. I mean, it's difficult, but as much as you can protect yourself. Well, you're a really advanced person, like a bodhisattva with clairvoyance. You've got the power to make incredible decisions because it's totally based on compassion and on wisdom. But you've got to be cautious. In other words, if you don't know that some of those seeds that you got in your garden could produce poison instead of herbs, you'd be very careful. So that is the attitude, not out of fear or neurosis, but out of kind of common sense and protection for yourself, to be careful about your karma. That's all. That's the general approach for yourself. That's the only way. That's the best piece of advice I could give. And if you feel that you're forced to do it because it's your job, otherwise maybe you'll lose your job, I don't know. Then you try to be very careful and have as much compassion as you can, but still you haven't got the wisdom to know the karma you're creating. So try and have as much compassion as you can. And if you have no mantras, maybe whisper a mantra into the person's ear, do what you can, be cautious is the general thing. In general, it's true, even in your own physical world, if you had to give a pill to one of those patients, if you didn't know the result of that pill, you would not give it, would you? You wouldn't just randomly give a pill. So that's the attitude to have. You be very cautious. It's exactly the same here. Do you get my point? Okay. That's the general attitude. So you really would then try to create the cause, not to have to be involved in decisions like that. I mean,
yeah,
that's preferable.
I left ITU now. I work in research, and that's that's the reason I didn't want to work there anymore.
That's an interesting point. Very good point. Okay, so thank you.
What about for purification in terms of purifying all this?
That's why, anyway, no matter what we do every day, purification is a really crucial practice, because we're not that wise. We don't know and you see, we don't know all the actions we're doing every second. We're very blind. We don't know. So we need, for our own sake, to do purification every day. We must do that. It protects our mind. Do you understand? Good, darling. Who had a question here? Someone? Yes, go. Hi.
As you were talking about karma, I was just wondering if you are reborn as an animal or a dog, how do you get back on track again?
I understand it's really difficult because you haven't got, there's nothing much as a dog that you can do because you haven't got the intelligence and you haven't got the ability to practice virtue. But you could say that dog has got thousands of karmic imprints in its mind to be human. So if it's your dog, you'd try and do what you can to help that karma ripen by letting it, I mean, the Buddhists would be letting it hear mantras, have things that would be very powerful for its mind that enable it. Or let's say if it's a dog, you protect it from killing, for example, during its life. You do what you can to encourage the virtuous karma that's already in its own mind to be triggered. That would be the best way to say it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
I mean, we've been animals in countless lives, and here we are. So clearly it's possible. Yeah, do you understand what
Yeah, I
I'm saying?
understand.
Yeah, that's why you have to help others.
Yeah.
Whether it's humans or animals, do what you can. And of course, the Buddhist view, when it comes to all this, very much is based on the confidence in the presence of Buddhas and holy beings. You know, that's a very strong one, especially for animals close to the time of death. Let them hear mantras, and it hooks the energy of the Buddhas to be there, to protect their mind and help karma, virtuous karma ripen. Yeah, okay. Yes, Cyril.
Yes,
Hello, sir.
dear Venerable Robina, I have a question concerning the karma involving another person. For example, so there are two questions. First, can we get the results of something which we haven't created the causes? For example, if someone without having practicing Dharma,
I don't understand the question, Cyril. Start again very carefully.
considering someone who hasn't practiced Dharma, or for example, any kind of virtue or Dharma practice, can he or she get the results by being just in contact, for example, with a stupa, or going to Bodh Gaya, for example, and just like that?
Well, that's the point we were just making here, Cyril.
Yeah.
If we talk about, I mean, this is the Buddhist, this is the teachings of the Lamas. They talk about, they've got to think about this. There are certain objects that have a lot of power, like holy objects, like the Buddha, that just contact with them can benefit the recipient. Yes, that's what they say. We've got to think about that. They say that. Yeah.
Okay, without practicing anything, or
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yes,
okay,
that's
okay,
it.
thank you, thank you.
And the second question?
Yeah, another question is concerning why do you say a labeled virtuous considering
I beg your
virtuous
pardon,
karma?
what? Start again, what?
You have said that something is labeled virtuous because it produces happiness. So why do you say labeled virtuous? Why don't you say virtuous?
I don't understand the question. Start again.
So you have said that virtuous actions produces happiness.
A virtue, yeah, so a virtuous
Yes, yes,
action.
a labeled virtuous action produces happiness. So why do you say labeled virtuous?
Why do I say what?
Why do you say labeled virtuous action rather than virtuous action?
Because we call it, an action has to be labeled negative or positive. There's no difference. I'm just saying it that way. I want to say it's more relaxing to put it that way. Labeled virtuous. It's okay. Nothing wrong. That's okay. Just another way of saying it, being more cautious. It's okay. It's the same meaning. It's the same meaning, Cyril.
Okay, thank you, Venerable.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Someone else? Question? Questions? Anybody? Yes, hello there, Audrey.
Audrey, hi there. Oh, thank you so much for this teaching. So I have a question. Because if the karma is created, the negative or positive karma is created by the mind. So if I see the ant and I say, oh, I'm going to kill it, but then I pause and decide not to kill it, would that still create the negative
Well,
karma?
no, I mean, you put the thought in there, but if you quickly changed it, then you counteracted it. I mean, clearly it's obvious. If you make a mistake playing the piano and you quickly change it right then, the first mistake doesn't have much power, does it? But if the mistake stays there for 27 years, it's much harder to change it. But of course, the quicker you change it, the better. Of course, every thought can be counteracted. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. So every pause is very important. The pauses are always crucial.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Who else, people? Any questions? 2:40, 3:30, 2:30, 1:30. Okay. Any questions, people?
I have a question.
Who is it?
Eileen, I have a question.
Eileen, hi, darling. Talk to me.
Yes, you use the expression, Robina, bank vault of seeds, right?
This is my term. Yeah, Buddha
Right,
clearly
no.
had a bank vault.
Yes, but I like it. But the thing is that there are billions of seeds. So every life is certain seeds will manifest,
Ripen. Yeah.
then
They'll ripen.
will ripen.
Yeah. Then,
The question I'm trying to ask is, if the life we're in right now, there are certain seeds that have ripened.
every second there are seeds ripening. Every second there are seeds ripening as a tendency, as an experience, or as an environmental result. Every second seeds are ripening. Every second seeds are ripening. Then question.
So every lifetime, different seeds will ripen.
That's this meaningless statement. If every second,
Exactly.
whether your mind's in a lifetime or not, if every second your mind is existing, every second your mind, one, is experiencing seeds, the fruits of seeds you planted in the past. Two, every second your mind is sowing more seeds that will produce more futures. It's an ongoing and constant process. That's why I've got to learn to be in charge of it.
Yes.
So what's the question?
That answers it.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Go on then. Yes, hello, it's Christine, sweetheart. Talk to me.
Good afternoon, Venerable Robina.
Hello, Dawn.
How can you support your own karma during grief? How can you support your own karma during grief? And what can
During
you...
grief.
Correct. And what
You mean
can
by
you...
support your own karma during grief? You mean not, how can you make sure you don't have too many negative thoughts? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And the second part to that question is, what practices and rituals can you do for the loved one who has died?
Oh, this, okay, the second part, there's so much, Lama Rinpoche's book, which I happen to edit, and I highly recommend you get it. It's an entire handbook, Christine. It's got, 2/3 of the book is all the practices that Rinpoche recommends, so many of them. So all the book is literally advice about what to do the months and weeks before, the weeks before, the days before, the hours before, and the days and weeks after death. It's all laid out exactly. So much advice. So if you want a really rich handbook of advice, it's called How to Face Death Without Fear by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, published by Wisdom. We're working on a reprint for the paperback at the moment, but the digital version is still available. It's full of advice, sweetheart. There's so much we can do. As for protecting your mind, you just try to remember impermanence, remember this will be me, remember it'll happen to me, remember compassion, and do what you can to help yourself and help others. That's it, sweetheart.
Thank you, Venerable.
Okay, darling. Who's died, sweetheart? Who's died? A dear friend has died? Who died?
My best friend of 45 years.
When did they die, darling?
December 29th.
Well, listen, we can do a little right now. We'll do a little medicine Buddha prayer. What's her name? His name. Tisha. So we'll just do medicine Buddha right now. So we visualize Tisha in front of us, and we visualize everybody we think about who's died or dying, our beloveds, whoever we want, right in front of us. And we think of the medicine Buddha there, looking like the regular Buddha, but he's blue. And we just say a few of his mantra, and we imagine blue light pouring out, entering into Tisha, blessing her, giving her a perfect rebirth, and everybody else taking away all their suffering and giving them everything they need. Tata bekanze maha bekanze ranza samungate svaha taya taum 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 bekanze maha bekanze Ranza samungate svaha. Okay, Christine, sweetheart. You remember, okay? I'll remember too. I'll remember as well, okay?
Thank you so much, Venerable.
Thank you, sweetheart. Somebody else, questions? Anybody, questions? Really, I'd say the hardest one really is for even if you've been Buddhist for years, the hardest one is to think this way, because we just, oh yeah, karma will go. Oh, karma, it's all karma will go. We're not really applying, we're just saying the word. But the way, this is the point, this karmic view, this is really getting close to emptiness, that things, you see, the whole point is that, as Lama Zopa says, and as the Buddha is saying, the way things out there appear to us, I mean, it's obvious really, is according to your interpretation. So if you have a view in your mind, just a feeling instinctive, that things happen unfairly, that you didn't ask to get born, that it's got nothing to do with you, that bad things just happen. That's a philosophical view that you're holding in your mind, but we don't even realize it. So of course, we're going to be very suffering in life because when bad things happen, what happens? It's not fair, poor me, I don't deserve it. That's how you feel, and that's how it appears. So our whole world, how it appears to us, how we experience it, is based upon how we interpret it. So if you're trying to live according to the Buddha's view because you've chosen to, you can't just say, oh, it's karma. You've got to say, what do you mean by that? You know, if I ask you, tell me how the garden works, please. Oh, it's botany. I understand. Please explain it. Oh, I don't know. What point is that? You can't just say, oh, it's botany. You've got to learn the details. And how do you learn that? It's not in the sky. Read the bloody books. Excuse me, being Australian. Saying that word. It's very Australian. Any word I'm saying here, it's not because I'm so clever. It's because I've, heard a few teachings and tried to remember it and then speaking it out to you and then finding ways to say it differently so it goes into our brain, And then it starts to become the way you interpret your life. That's what practicing Buddhism means. This is the same as playing piano. Oh, I like music. And you have Bach's notes in front of you and you can't even read the notes. Well, how can you learn music? You can't. 27 years later, it'll be exactly the same. Oh, I like music. You have to learn to read the theories. Then you can become a musician. So it's practice. And practice isn't sitting on your bottom, watching your boring old breath. That helps. Practice is changing your conceptual thoughts that interpret your world. That's what being a Buddhist means. And so you can decide. You might not look, many people who are Buddhists don't think about karma and do not care about karma. That's fine. That's their business. You can take 1% of Buddhism. Up to you. We're discussing 100% in this room. I like the 100%. And this is getting us very close to the view that nothing has an intrinsic nature, which is emptiness, which is more advanced. So by understanding karma can help us understand that. It's up to us. And it takes time, that's for sure. Because everything is so instinctively the opposite. Things just seem to happen randomly. The good things and the bad things, we just take them all for granted. We never question. We're like as blind as bats, really, just plodding along, as long as everybody's believing in our karmic appearances. Poor me, unhappy me, not fair. Why does this happen? The karma's quite intense. I mean, I love it. I absolutely think it's the best. I love it. I know when I first heard the teachings, that's the piece that had been missing for me in my life, I love the teachings about karma. I love that explanation. I love it. Puts me in charge. That's marvelous. So your questions, people? Any old thing?
I have a question. Wait, maybe.
Yes, darling, you talk. Come on, give me the microphone. Yes,
I maybe have a question. You mentioned in the beginning the Four Noble Truths.
the what?
You mentioned in the beginning the Four Noble Truths.
Yes.
The truth of suffering you
Yes.
explained. So we just spoke about somebody dying, our loved one died, we died over and over and over again. And that's because the cause is
That's right.
it's
That's
karma.
right. That's right.
Karma is the cause, and that's the second truth.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Exactly. So, I mean, So, well, I mean, specifically, let's look at that one. Specifically, the length of our life. That's determined by the amount of non-killing karma we have in our bank vault. So if you're born a human, but you need to live more than a day as a human in that human body. The third kind of karma is called experiences similar to the cause. So in order for your life to be long, You need to have lots of non-killing karma in that bank vault. And that's, in other words, that's the main cause of living a long life, is non-killing. So if you die young or get killed, that's the fruit of killing. So we need to be fortunate, you know. I mean, so yeah, getting a human life is a fruit of non-killing. But a long life is also the fruit of non-killing. And the opposite of getting in this human life, you've got a human life due to non-killing, but you've got the karma of killing that ripens as an experience, which means you die young. You might even die on the feet. You might even die in the womb before you even get born. You understand? You won the lottery, you got a human body, but you due to past killing, you have the experience similar to the cause of your past killing that ripens as an experience of being killed. You get aborted. You understand? People die young, babies die, healthy people die, you know. That's the fruit of killing. You understand? So that's why the key one, which we'll discuss about here and discuss a bit before we finish. The key one, if you look at the world, just use the example of killing as an example of killing and non-killing. So you've got 7 billion humans. But look at the number of humans. The next level that karma ripens is the mind inside that human body. Well, look at the number of humans who kill. I'd say the majority of humans kill. I would suggest that. Even most religions teach it's okay to kill some kind of being or other, you know. Christians are taught, I was taught as a Catholic, that God made the animals and the creatures for our benefit. So we can kill them. That's a pretty interesting teaching, isn't it? The trillions of beings who are creatures and animals, it's okay to kill, according to Jesus Christ. That's an interesting teaching. I know what the Muslims say. I don't know what the other ones say. But that's an example. So clearly, the tendency to kill is a very strong tendency in the human mind, isn't it? And that's from killing in the past. And this is so. The next one is the experience similar to the cause, like this one. You get killed. You die young. Well, look at the humans who die as fetuses. I'm sure we never do that research, but I wouldn't be surprised if you did your research on just on how many babies get aborted or miscarry. That's due to the karma of that being in the womb from their past killing, that they die young. And then look at the people who get sick and have unhealthy bodies. That's the environmental karma of killing. So in other words, and so why is that then? That's because this is what the teaching says, why living in vows is tremendously powerful. So basically, living in vows of not killing. So like I said before, the time you create a karmic seed, the time you drop a karmic seed into your non-killing main bank vault is when those 4 conditions are in place. The mouse or the ant, the intention, the motivation, the action, and the result. When that's all there, it's then and only then that you create a complete action of killing, non-killing, that then drops into your bank vault. And that'll be one that would be ripened as a type of rebirth. But this is the tragedy. You get one of the people on this planet who's got a human body, but has got a tendency to kill, for example, spends their life killing, might even get killed and die young, and maybe is also unhealthy and sick. So they've got the 3 results of killing in this human life. And because they haven't purified all aspects of killing. So they get a human body, but they've been in the lower realms in the past where they completed the result of killing, the main results, but they haven't purified the residual results of killing, which is the tendency to kill, the experience of being killed and having an unhealthy body. Whereas if you live in a vow not to kill, you are ticking over and putting into your main bank vault non-killing karmic seeds 24 hours a day by living in a vow not to kill. Buddha says the vow not to kill is psychologically so much more powerful than merely not killing occasionally. Whereas if you have a vow not to kill, your mind stream is pervaded by that vow. And 24 hours a day that you're keeping that incredibly powerful decision that you have made when you took refuge, I will never kill from this moment until the time I die. I will never lie. I will never steal. This is tremendously powerful psychologically. And they even say that these vows are like subtle physical energy visible to clairvoyance. And that's 24 hours a day that you are keeping these vows, even without thinking about it. You're putting karmic seeds of non-killing, non-stealing, non-harming, non-lying into your bank vault. So the difference is you'll wake up in a human life, one, with a human body, two, with no thought to kill, no thought to lie, no thought to steal, no thought to harm others. Not as accidental, it's because you've lived in vows, you've purified all aspects of those negative tendencies. The next, you won't get killed, you won't die young, you won't be lied to, you won't be stolen from. And next, you will live in a good environment and people won't harm you and you'll be fat and healthy and delicious and things and lovely things will happen. So in other words, we create the cause, and living in vows is the most powerful way to purify all the negative tendencies and have all good for results. This is the point. If you look at the human realm, it's evident most people haven't lived in vows. And the most tragic one to come back into this life with is the tendency to keep stealing, the tendency to keep lying, the tendency to keep killing. That's the most painful one, because that sends you right back to the lower realms in the future. It's so tragic. I think we've got to look at the logic of that. Vows aren't just some kind of weird thing. It's a strong, if you make a strong decision, I will never kill from now until the day I die. How can that not have a powerful effect on your mind and completely determine your actions, you know? So powerful. So living in vows is a no-brainer. Understand? Time to go home. I'm just repeating you the teachings I've heard from my lamas, from Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, His Holiness Dalai Lama, and my Geshis, the ones I've studied with. All I can do is do that. And that's what I'm trying to do myself. I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is. Right. Jangchob Semcho Rinpoche Make Panam Ke Gyuchig Ke Panyampa Mepa Yang Gongne Gonju Koba Shog. Okay, people, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Much love, everybody. Goodbye, goodbye. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Venerable.
I've got to get
Thank you,
home.
Venerable.